In Counter-Strike, there have been many guns that have once dominated the game
Yes.
and have fallen far from grace after the nerfs.
It's not a one-shot headshot. It's not a one-shot headshot. They don't have armor.
From the broken RA to the crazy CZ, these weapons took over the Counter-Strike meta long ago. Today, we will be going over the weapons that have dominated metas and see how far they've fallen. Starting off with the UMP-45. This gun took a very long time to be truly nerfed. In 2013, its price was reduced to the price we know today, and in 2014, its armor penetration was increased along with other SMGs. This made it a very good gun, as with its high damage and low cost, it absolutely deserved the nickname of the $1,200 rifle, as it had more base damage than actual rifles with a similar fire rate. Yes, it had a somewhat large drop-off of 50% per 500 units, but it still hit very hard at closer ranges, being a 5-6 shot at usual ranges with a 666 RPM. It gives you $600 per kill in competitive, and that has not changed. And oddly enough, as YouTuber iNotorious pointed out, this gun, while being very strong, was heavily overshadowed by other extremely strong guns in the meta like the Tech 9, the CZ75, and only really has shined once these guns left the meta. And when it shined, it shined. The massive kill reward, along with the great performance of this gun, made pro players Molotov themselves, so the UMP users couldn't get their kill reward as the gun was just that strong. It dominated the meta as you didn't need to waste your money on a Famas or a Galil, as you can just get this $1,200 monster and buy a bunch of extra armor and utility in between. So how was it nerfed? It's simple. In 2017, Valve decided to reduce the range modifier from 0.85 to 0.75, which made the damage drop off at 25% per 500 units. This is almost double the damage drop off it had before, and it absolutely kicked it out of the meta. To put this into perspective, if the AK-47 had this kind of damage drop off, the gun would not be able to one-tap armored opponents to the head at a range of about 4 meters. This made the gun absolutely useless at long ranges and very weak at mid ranges. It's still an okay weapon if you'd like to use it, but it's not too great, and there are definitely better alternatives now. I think this nerf is too extreme, and it should have wrapped at 0.8 instead, but what's done is done. The gun is nowhere near meta. But what kept the UMP from being meta until they were nerfed? Introducing the CZ75 Auto. This gun was the second best pistol in the history of Counter-Strike, the first best being leagues above this one. But this gun had the ability to one-tap the head, had a fast fire rate, and a cheap price at $300. It was known as the Pocket AK for a very good reason. This weapon was nerfed multiple times, but it still remained very strong. In July of 2014, the accuracy was reduced, and in September of the same year, its price was raised, and it was moved to the Tech 9 and 5.7 category. In December of 2014, it received so many nerfs. The mag size was reduced to 8, the damage in RPM was reduced, the killer ward became abysmal, and it takes almost twice as long to draw. Only 2 of those nerfs were reverted in 2015. I'm sure it fell off at this point as a $100 killer ward is horrendous, and the damage is slightly lower now. It was still a decent gun at this point, but there's not really much of a reason to use it over the 5.7 or Tech 9 now, especially as the latter was so strong. The CZ75 would get further nerfs later down the line. The same year, move inaccuracy was nerfed, but reverted back at the end of the exact same month, so it doesn't matter much. But in 2018, this gun was hit hard by another nerf. This gun's damage was no longer enough to kill a player with a headshot at close range, and it was just weaker in general. This kind of made the gun suck, as the killer ward was far too low for a gun like this. It was kind of average in performance, but there's no reason to use a Tech 9 or 5.7 over its gun now. The gun was hit again in 2018, which is just rubbing the salt in the wound. The killer reward was finally reverted in 2024, but the damage has been done. The gun fell out of the meta and became easily replaceable. The gun is no longer the menace it once was. It's now a husk of its former self, and is overshadowed easily by other pistols. Another gun that was ridiculously strong at this time was the Tech 9. It was ridiculously good too. It was by far the most spammable pistol, as it initially had a mag size of 32. This is so large that it had more ammo per mag than most rifles and even the dual Berettas. It was buffed even more in 2013 when it, along with the 5.7, had a reduced price. It somehow took until 2015 for this gun to be nerfed, and the gun had an increased damage fall off, now being 0.79. I'm not sure what it was before, but 0.79 is very bad. It also had a reduced mag size, although it's still huge at 24 rounds. It was still good in the meta at this time, as you can spam the hell out of it, and it would basically function as a $500 rifle. However, it was no longer breaking the game, and around this time the UMP hit the meta. It somehow took another 2 years to nerf this very strong gun, and in 2017, its spammability was nerfed as it is now very inaccurate when spammed hard. It also had its mag reduced to 18 rounds, but unlike the previous two guns though, this gun is still very great and a good choice to use in eco rounds, as it's very effective for $500. So while this gun was slowly nudged out of the meta, it's still in good shape after all these years, and I don't want this gun to be changed as I think it's well balanced right now. It's crazy how many pistols were so strong during the early Counter-Strike era, as the next meta gun we will talk about is the R8 Revolver. This gun was stupidly good when it arrived in the game. It was introduced in the winter update in Counter-Strike in 2015, so it was a newer weapon. Base damage was 115 back then, which means it could one-tap armored opponents to the body. Along with the insane performance, it also had a bug back then, which you could exploit to shoot at the quick speed of its secondary fire, with the primary fire's accuracy. This was so broken it had to be patched right away, but with this glitch, it effectively became the most overpowered gun that has ever been added to the game. No other gun at its most powerful state was anywhere close. Even without the glitch, it did way too much damage and was a literal pocket op for $850. However, this gun was a special case as it only dominated the meta for 2 days after it was released. Valve absolutely nuked this weapon's stats, reducing the base damage from 115 to 85, and making the trigger pull time go from 0.33 seconds to 4 seconds. They even decreased the accuracy slightly. At $850, this gun was really not great. At the moment this upgrade dropped, the entire community dropped this gun, and it was considered a meme gun for the longest time. Even with updates, this gun is considered a meme. Although I believe this gun has potential as it's actually decent for a $600 gun, most of the community believes this gun is awful and it will very likely stay that way for a very long time. It has time in the sun for 2 days, but flew too close and died too fast. Now, there is another meta we must mention that was talked about but not nearly as complained about as other metas for some reason, and this was the M4A1S meta. There were two M4A1S metas actually, one in 2014 to 2015 when the gun was new to the game, and one 5 years after it got killed and came back to life, which is the 2020 to 2022 M4A1S meta, and the one we will talk about. I have made a video about the history of this gun along with its cousin, the M4A4, but if you want a summary of this gun's long history, basically it was introduced as a great alternative to the M4A4 and got nerfed severely. In 2019, it had its ammo set to 25 after being 20 for a while, but this didn't do much. However, in 2020, the price was reduced to $2,900, which made the gun significantly more popular because of how much money is saved. And in 2021, its body shot damage was increased, being the only gun that doesn't have a 4x headshot multiplier. But this allowed the gun to 4-shot at very long distances because of its extremely good range modifier of 0.99. This gun was so strong that it made the game mostly CT side just because of this gun. Nobody used the alternative M4A4 because the M4A1S was just a better gun statistically, and it was $200 cheaper. Then in 2022, the ammo was reduced to 20 per mag, and its range modifier was severely reduced. And in 2024, the M4A4 had its cost reduced as well. This gun is still great, and I've been warming up towards it, but now the M4A4 can find its spot in people's arsenals, now that they not only are more equal to each other, but you can actually put both of them in the same inventory. I find it a bit annoying that this meta was not complained about as much when people discuss broken metas, just because the gun is an M4. So many other metas were about as broken as the A1S meta, but because CS players have a boner for the M4 and AKs and hate when any other gun is good, nobody seems to care about this meta. There really weren't any metas as broken and insane as the pistol metas. In fact, there hasn't really been a meta that's been complained about as much when compared to the pistol metas. However, we do have one last meta to talk about, and this is by far one of the most iconic ones. The scoped rifle meta. I've already made a video detailing the history of both guns, but if you want a quick summary, basically these guns have been very good for a while, having very good stats and damage for their cost, but nobody would pick them up because Counter-Strike players for some reason hate any deviation from the AKs and M4s. However, one day Valve decided to cut down the prices for both guns significantly and getting everybody to use them. And then they reverted the prices now that people actually like the gun. However, people are now using this gun all the time and were complaining it's broken. And they were very strong guns, but really if you think about it, they're not nearly as broken as any truly broken gun like the Tech 9 and CZ. Still though, all this pressure got Valve to nerf the AUG and SG, balancing the AUG fairly and killing the SG. It's kind of upsetting because, in my opinion, was the least broken meta. People are fine with AKs and M4s being the only guns people ever used, but when another gun shines as well, it needs to be nerfed into oblivion. I'm happy that the AUG is finally getting some love after the new smoke update, which I didn't take into account in my earlier video about it, but the SG is still not great as a T-side weapon, although it is much better as a CT-side weapon. And it makes me sad seeing there really is no good alternative to the AK, but what's done is done, I guess. What once dominated the meta, and it should have dominated the meta before it did, has now fallen off, one staying alive and the other dying. I would like to note that there was this one tiny meta at the beginning of the game which involved killing people from spawning pistol rounds and getting an SMG right after, and this usually was done with the MAC-10, but this might have been possible with other guns, and it wasn't amazing after pistol rounds, so I didn't feel like including a section on it. But I felt like it was worth a mention. And there was also time people discovered the scout can jump shot, and apparently with meta, in quotes, but you can still do that with the scout today, so I didn't include either. But what does the meta look like today? The meta is quite average as of right now. Obviously, since there aren't any particularly broken guns right now, the AK and both M4s are the obvious staples in the game. Almost everybody uses it when they have the money to. The AUG has seen a resurgence as it can shoot through smokes, however, still rarely used. The Galil is an amazing force by rifle, and the Famas is as terrible as ever. The MP9 and MAC-10 are by far the best SMGs in the game, with no other SMG coming close, and with the MP9 being ridiculously good. The Scout is a decent pick for a force buy round and a bad pick for any other one, and the op still reigns supreme. Every pistol except the R8, P2000, Dualies, and CC75 had their place, and none of them are really overpowered as far as I can tell. The XM1014 is the only usable shotgun, and it's a very strong one. The Negev has its niches, and the M249 is useless. So as of right now, the meta guns are the M4s, the AK, the Galil, the OP, the MP9, the MAC-10, the USP, the Glock, and the Deagle. This is very normal as the CS meta has been quite similar when there aren't any guns breaking in the game. However, I think it's saddening how most of the guns mentioned are either useless or severely outclassed. I wish more guns had a place in the meta, or at least had some ground to stand on, but as you can tell, Valve has a history of severely over-nerfing weapons and killing. It happened to the R8, it happened to the CZ, and it happened to the SG. If another gun became broken, it would happen to that gun as well. I wish the meta as of right now was more interesting and that Valve either overbuffs a certain gun or adds a broken one just for fun and hopefully doesn't nerf it into oblivion once it inevitably gets nerfed. That's it for the video. What do you guys think? Did Valve kill the guns I mentioned in the video, or are they still perfectly fine? Which meta did you hate the most? I wasn't around for any of these except the for A1S meta, but I didn't play the game much back then anyway. Which meta do you like the most? How would you buff nerfs on the guns? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. See you later.